Understanding Judaism and Zionism, thanks to Israel Shahak's book, Jewish History, Jewish Religion, Chapter 6, Political Consequences, following. U.S. support for Israel, when considered not in abstract but in concrete detail, can't be adequately explained only as a result of American imperial interests. The strong influence wielded by the organized Jewish community in the USA in support of all Israeli policies must also be taken into account in order to explain the Middle East policies of American administrations. This phenomenon is even more noticeable in the case of Canada, whose Middle Eastern interests can be considered as important, but whose loyal dedication to Israel is even greater than that of the USA. In both countries, and also in France, Britain, and many other states, Jewish organizations support Israel with about the same loyalty which communist parties accorded to the USSR for so long. Also, many Jews who appear to be active in defending human rights and who adopt non-conformist views on other issues do, in cases affecting Israel, display a remarkable degree of totalitarianism and are in the forefront of the defense of all Israeli policies. It is well known in Israel that the chauvinism and fanaticism in supporting Israel displayed by organized diaspora Jews is much greater, especially since 1967, than the chauvinism shown by an average Israeli Jew. This fanaticism is especially marked in Canada and in the USA, but because of the incomparably greater political importance of the USA, I will concentrate on the latter. It should, however, be noted that we also find Jews whose views of Israeli policies are not different from those held by the rest of the society, with due regard to the factors of geography, income, social position, and so on. Why should some American Jews display chauvinism, sometimes extreme, and others not? We should begin by observing the social and therefore also the political importance of the Jewish organizations which are of an exclusive nature. They admit no non-Jews on principle. This exclusivism is in amusing contrast with their hunt to condemn the most obscure non-Jewish club which refuses to admit Jews. Those who can be called organized Jews and who spend most of their time outside work hours mostly in the company of other Jews can be presumed to uphold Jewish exclusivism and to preserve the attitudes of the classical Judaism to non-Jews. Under present circumstances, they can't openly express their attitudes toward non-Jews in the USA, where non-Jews constitute more than 97% of the population. They compensate for this by expressing their real attitudes in their support of the Jewish state and the treatment it meets to the non-Jews of the Middle East. How else can we explain the enthusiasm displayed by so many American rabbis in support of, let us say, Martin Luther King, compared with their lack of support for the rights of Palestinians, even for their individual human rights? How else can we explain the glaring contradiction between the attitudes of classical Judaism toward non-Jews, which include the rule that their lives should not be saved except for the sake of Jewish interest, with the support of the US rabbis and organized Jews for the rights of the blacks? After all, Martin Luther King and the majority of American blacks are non-Jews. Even if only the conservative and Orthodox Jews, who together constitute the majority of organized American Jews, are considered to hold such opinions about the non-Jews, the other part of organized US Jewry, the Reform, had never opposed them, and in my view show themselves to be quite influenced by them. Actually, the explanation of this apparent contradiction is easy. It should be recalled that Judaism, especially in its classical form, is totalitarian in nature. The behavior of supporters of other totalitarian ideologies of our times was not different from that of the organized American Jews. Stalin and his supporters never tired of condemning the discrimination against the American or the South African blacks, especially in the midst of the worst crimes committed within the USSR. The South African apartheid regime was tireless in its denunciations of the violations of human rights committed either by communist or by other African regimes, and so were its supporters in other countries. Many similar examples can be given. The support of democracy or of human rights is therefore meaningless or even harmful and deceitful when it does not begin with self-critique and with support of human rights when they are violated by one's own group. Any support of human rights in general by a Jew which does not include the support of human rights of non-Jews whose rights are being violated by the Jewish state is as deceitful as the support of human rights by a Stalinist. The apparent enthusiasm displayed by American rabbis or by the Jewish organizations in the USA during the 1950s and the 1960s in support of the blacks in the South was motivated only by considerations of Jewish interest, such as was the communist support for the same blacks. Its purpose in both cases was to try to capture the black community politically. In the Jewish case, to an unthinking support of Israeli policies in the Middle East. Therefore, the real test facing both Israeli and diaspora Jews is the test of their self-criticism, which must include the critique of the Jewish past. The most important part of such a critique must be detailed and honest confrontation of the Jewish attitude to non-Jews. This is what many Jews justly demand from non-Jews, to confront their own past and so become aware of the discrimination and persecutions inflicted on the Jews. In the last 40 years, the number of non-Jews killed by Jews is by far greater than the number of the Jews killed by non-Jews. The extent of the persecution and discrimination against non-Jews inflicted by the Jewish state with the support of organized diaspora Jews is also enormously greater than the suffering inflicted on Jews by regimes hostile to them. Although the struggle against anti-Semitism and of all other forms of racism should never cease, the struggle against Jewish chauvinism and exclusivism which must include a critique of classical Judaism, is now of equal or greater importance. End of this book. May God bless you, Israel SHAHAK. You enlightened us. You taught us so deeply. God bless you. And God bless all those who are thirsty for truth and justice. Because no peace, no reconciliation without justice and truth. Amen.